We are back with Season 2's 0 to KSM challenge, and today, I think you're going to enjoy this one, but oh my goodness, what have I gotten myself into? If you haven't already seen the first episode, I highly recommend you go and watch that one first, because then you'll understand my background towards healing, and of course, the beginning of this epic adventure. But before we get into today's episode, if you would like to watch me live or perhaps join me for some Keystones, you can catch me live over on Twitch a few days a week. A link to that and all of my other socials can be found below. So, new reset, which means we have new Cataclysm Time Walkings, we have the 5 heroic Dragonflight dungeons, and of course we have the world boss. But before we jump into those, I kind of forgot to do something last week. I forgot to finish the Niffen weekly, and I didn't get my half of the spark. However, we do have a nice catch-up mechanic where they drop quite often from some of the bosses that you kill. So at the end of the Mythic Plus dungeons, you can get them from the chests. Yeah, I've seen quite a few players loot them from the chests, so I'm not too concerned about that. The only thing that hurts is not getting the additional item that could potentially be an upgrade. And well, you guys know me, I'm probably going to slack on using the spark anyway, so maybe it's not that big a deal after all. Now, going back to the first episode, there were a couple of things that I forgot to mention. Well, actually one, I can't remember if I did. But in terms of the content I'll be running during this challenge, it will be strictly Mythic Plus only. So there will be no raid content, not even LFR. Running LFR now or potentially pugging normal could net me some massive upgrades and potentially tier set. But I mean, if I don't do that and I don't get tier and it takes me longer to do the challenge, you guys get more episodes, right? And then I get to milk the watch time. Love you! The second thing I didn't mention, and is probably why I didn't finish the Niffen weekly last week, is the fact that I am Mistweaver. It's a healing spec, right? So we don't typically deal a lot of damage, or at least I don't. So doing some of the world quests can be very, very tedious. Now, this is the 0 to KSM challenge, and I did think perhaps I could switch to Windwalker and just do some of the world quests. Personally, I don't think that's cheating, but there's some of you out there that will disagree, so I've decided to stay Mistweaver and not spec into anything else. So yeah, I'm probably going to slack a lot on the Niffen weekly, and I'm just going to finish it over time. Alright, so I jump into some Cataclysm Time Walkings. And this one's interesting because the cash that you get from this one contains loot from the raid. Now, sadly, and as far as I'm aware, this cache doesn't actually include any tier gear. So the only things I was really hoping for out of these were the trinkets. But let's be honest, pretty much anything's going to be an upgrade right now. So we smashed through all of the Cataclysm Time Walkings and we jumped into heroic Dragonflight dungeons to complete that weekly as well. It felt really nice and I saw massive improvements completing both the Time Walkings and the heroic dungeons. Well, maybe improvements is the wrong word. Perhaps it's just confidence and knowing when to press some of my abilities. Nevertheless, it was good practice and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So with both of those complete, we go on to the world boss to see what fat loot this guy has for me this week. Yeah, nothing. And Season 1 blessed me with all the good loot from the world bosses. Season 2, however? Pfft, nah. Alright, so the world boss has been taken down, both of the dungeon weeklies have been completed, and it's time to head over to the vault. So we do indeed start this week with 403 item level and 520 Mythic Plus rating. There are really only a few things that I'm hoping for from both the caches and the vault. Obviously I'd be very happy with a weapon, but tier gear and trinkets, that would be amazing. Alright, so I open the heroic cache first and I get a 415 neck. Yeah, this one was poop. Wasn't very happy, it came with the wrong stats. Won't be using this one. And then we open the Time Walkings cache. And if you remember in Season 1, although it states 415, you can get items slightly higher because this does come from the raid. And well, I was quite lucky with this one because it actually gave me a 418 mace. I say lucky, I don't actually have an offhand, so I guess I won't be using this either. With a terrible neck piece and a weapon I can't even use, it's time to open the vault. And surely, our luck is about to change. Because we only have 2 slots for the vault, so hopefully, one of them is at least half decent. And thankfully, we are blessed with a lovely tier piece. This chest tier piece actually has really good stats as well. Look at that yummy haste. Not only that, but it doesn't replace any of my current tier from Season 1, so I've still got that going for me as well. And if you didn't think it could get any better, this 415 chest piece replaces a 389. Yeah, that was a pretty big upgrade. Nice. With the new chest equipped, it brings our total item level up to 405. And the key we got this week is a Halls of Infusion 8. With the weeklies and the vault taken care of, it's finally time to jump into some Mythic Plus. And this week's affixes are Tyrannical, Incorporeal. Yeah, apparently I said this incorrectly for last Wednesday's weekly reset, and Keita corrected me.
It's Leviosa, not Leviosa. I'm
going to continue to pronounce this incorrectly, okay? Just deal with it. And then we have Spiteful. But in terms of the new affix, Incorporeal, shut up. Well, I kind of had a plan going into this reset. So in terms of gear, I feel like I'm a little on the low side, and I kind of wanted to grind some 6s for a couple of different reasons. Firstly, there's obviously the gear. I also wanted to farm some Drake crests that you can get from +6 to +10s. That way I could start upgrading some of the gear. I feel like +6s I can smash through for the most part, depending on the group obviously. Now there have been some hairy moments, but for the majority of the dungeons, they've actually felt quite comfortable. So that was the plan. This week I was going to grind a bunch of +6s, hopefully obtaining some of the new shiny trinkets, get some upgrades from other bits and pieces, and then perhaps next week I can push slightly higher. Sounds like a solid plan, right? I'm going to stick to it, right? So we start our day by pushing our own key, a Halls of Infusion 6. I was a little picky with the group in terms of item level. There were a few people signing up to the key that had like 370 item level. I kind of wanted people above 400. That was kind of like the minimum. Rating, I wasn't bothered so much. I was willing to give those a go that had like 0 rating, for example. I mean, it's only a 6. I even invited a hunter. Am I ill? All right, we start the run. We only have to deal with Tyrannical, of course, because it's a 6. We don't get the new affix until +7. And everything goes really smoothly up until the 3rd boss. Now, I had to watch this in slow motion to actually figure out what happened. And I didn't actually realize that the hunter was survival until I think the 2nd boss. And of course it's a spec that I haven't played and know nothing about. So when I watched this back to see how they died, they seem to have used a gap closer which broke line of sight. And well, Hailstorm did the rest. Oh, it's still funny. But do you know what makes it even better? The fact that Glacial Surge was happening. They received a combat res and they decided to take it when the first ring was happening. Yep, they died instantly. Again, why do I continue to take hunters? What's wrong with me? All right, so we get through the gauntlet. No one dies. We begin our encounter against the primal tsunami. What? Of all the things to die to, I didn't expect him to disengage through one of those orbs. He got through the entire gauntlet and did that. Oh man, I can't even make this up. Oh, but that wasn't even my favorite part of this dungeon. This was a good one, guys. So sadly, we have to deal with stage 2, which means we have to run the gauntlet again. Now, I don't remember the last stream I had where I wasn't memed on for the bridge boss incident for season 1's challenge. Yeah, you guys have been teasing me about this bridge as well, and oh man, I was laughing so hard when this happened. I was legit laughing so hard, I had to stop and type it out. Not only that, but Keita walked through the door. She had no idea I was actually recording, and she wanted to know what was going on. She looked at me all confused, but I obviously couldn't tell her what I was doing, so... yeah, just for the record, she has no idea what happens in these episodes. She finds out at the same time as you guys, which is really hard sometimes, because I want to speak to someone about some of my encounters, but I can't. I've got no one to talk to. Well, I guess you guys were right. The Halls of Infusion Gauntlet is officially the Bridge Boss 2.0. I'm just glad it wasn't me this time. Not yet anyway. We make our way through the gauntlet, we res the hunter, and we take down the boss. And then I get this message.
You did not see that.
Oh, Avissa, I'm so sorry to do this to you, but thank you for being such a good sport. Now, I'm not usually one to promote my YouTube and Twitch through dungeons and whatnot, but I made an exception in this case because I had to warn Avissa that unfortunately their blunder would end up in next week's episode. Now, if they were to reply and politely ask that I don't put it in the episode, then you wouldn't have seen it today. But they seemed fine about it, so Avissa, if you're watching, I appreciate you, and I hope our paths cross again. Now, in terms of the dungeon, we 3-chested the run, our mythic rating went up to 618, and we actually received our Bis feat with Leech. Item level still sitting at 405, but a very nice upgrade. Yo, you. Yeah, you. Did you know that leaving a like on this video increases your chances of getting the best loot from your weekly vault? Alright, so maybe it doesn't. Fine, I get it. I know when I'm not wanted. Back to the video. So, seeing as the Halls of Infusion run went so smoothly, it gave us a Vortex Pinnacle +9. Well, at this point I was filled with confidence and I kinda went back on my plans and decided not to bump it down to a 6 and leave it at 9. Now, I've touched on Vortex Pinnacle in the first episode, but this is basically the dungeon I dislike the most. I mean, DPSing it on my Demon Hunter is absolutely awful. Tanking it, not so bad, but as always, it depends on the rest of your group. So, I formed the group for this Vortex Pinnacle +9. And because it's a +9, we get an additional affix, Incorporeal. Did I say it right this time? Probably not. The group I put together included a couple of DPS that were above 420, a Rep Paladin and a Prop Paladin, which is always good, right? And then of course there's me. Now, a question for you guys that perhaps you could answer in the comments below and help me out with this, but in terms of composition and the groups I'm putting together. Now, Mistweaver is a melee, right? We stand in melee. That's where we do all of our healing. So should I consider putting a comp together that involves 2 ranged DPS and 1 melee? I mean, I think in some cases you can get away with a lot of melee, but there are definitely some encounters like Neltharian's Lair, the worm boss. Yeah, melee heavy comps on that fight is not so great. Alright, so getting back to Vortex Pinnacle. As this is a +9 and we've got the new affix to deal with, I'll talk about this place in a little more detail. So I guess this is like the featured dungeon of the episode, just like we did for Neltharis. Leading up to the first boss, there are 2 things that I wanted to mention. Firstly, you encounter an ad called Lurking Tempest. Now, these mobs will try and continuously cast something called Lethal Current, and you really don't want this to go off, because as the name mentions, it's pretty lethal. Now, you can easily interrupt this just by looking at the ad. The second way is to simply outrange the mob. On their own, incredibly easy to deal with, but we'll get back to them very soon. Incorporeal. I got it right that time, right? No? Okay. So, while in combat, incorporeal beings periodically appear and attempt to weaken players. Now, if these ads manage to get their cast off, each player within 100 yards will receive a massive debuff. This debuff reduces both damage and healing done by 50% for 10 seconds. So, from my understanding, up to 2 spawn every 45 seconds and lasts for 20 seconds. Of course, you can use stuff like interrupts and stuns to stop the casts. However, the only way to stop them is to use hard CC. So, monks with their paralysis, demon hunters with their imprison, a mage with polymorph, a shaman with hex, you get the idea. So yeah, you can interrupt their cast and stop it, but they'll instantly start casting again. Alright, so with all that in mind, we make it to the first boss. I know this could be a tough fight, it's a 9, the highest I've gone before, so I try and get some mana back, but the tank has other plans. And well, we've spoken about melee on this fight. The warrior charges in. Yeah, you can't stand inside the boss. That's not good. If I ever see stuff like that, like, I can't heal you through it. I'm just going to let you die. I guess they didn't know either because they typed
how ...
So not only do we have to stand outside the boss's area, we have to dodge all the balls. We have to move out when the boss starts casting Cyclone Shield. And oh yeah, you remember the Lurking Tempests? Well, we have to deal with 4 of them now. And then we have the incorporeal ads. So yeah, there's a lot to deal with. Now, my positioning for this fight has been pretty bad. I get hit by the balls a couple of times, I take a lot of damage. And there's a lot of things I could do better. But boy, did this group not make it any easier. So I don't like to call people out, and I just want to remind everyone that I'm not going to go through the hassle of blurring names and this, that and the other. That, and I shouldn't have to. But please don't message any of these players. There's some things I show in these videos for comedic effect and to paint a picture, and there's obviously a lot that you guys don't see. Because unfortunately I do encounter some very toxic players. Their actions can be questionable and the things they say, well, it's definitely not something I want in my videos. So, very early on, in the first couple of packs, I noticed the Rep Paladin was AFK. Yeah, so I want to say it was the only time this happened, but unfortunately it happened quite often throughout the entire dungeon. Not only that, but both the Rep Paladin and the Arms Warrior didn't know very much about the dungeon, which is absolutely fine. I don't mind showing people the ropes. I wasn't entirely bothered about timing it, but it's a very difficult place to teach via party chat. I mean, we've got the wins on the dragon boss, for example, and then we've got the last boss where you have to jump before the cast goes off and get inside the triangle. But yeah, I guess we got to get to those bosses first, right? So, unfortunately, we do wipe on the first boss. All three DPS sadly get hit by too many balls and they die. There are many things we have to do on this boss. First of all, we should try and interrupt as many lightning bolt casts as we can. We have to stay inside the circle of cyclones during Storm's Edge, otherwise we take a butt ton of damage. We have to interrupt all 4 of the Lurking Tempests. We have to dodge all of the incoming cyclone shield fragments. And then we have to avoid being hit by any of the cyclones when the boss casts Cyclone Shield. And now, of course, because we are outside of the cyclones, the entire party takes a load of damage. So there's a lot of healing involved for this encounter. And on top of that, don't forget that we've still got Incorporeal to deal with as well. So this fight for me personally was a tough one. I underestimated everything that was going on and that we had to deal with as a party. And I got flustered and I was misplaying and getting hit by all the balls. Yeah, Dilly didn't have a good time. It took 2 attempts, but eventually we got this boss down. Now, as mentioned, the Warrior and the Paladin don't know much about this dungeon. Let's just hope they know that they have to click on the wins to get carried to the next platform.
Lol. It didn't want me to fly.
I guess they didn't. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did that back in the day too. Anyway, we make it to the second boss. Alright, so firstly, everyone wants to make sure they're not standing on the outer side of the arena, because this does a lot of damage, so just make sure you're in the main circle. And then we have the first ability that we're going to talk about, and that's Call the Wind. Now, winds will flow and periodically change throughout the entire fight. Everyone's goal for this fight is to basically stand upwind. It's usually a good idea to have everyone stacked up together and just move with the tank. Although every once in a while, the boss will cast Chilling Breath. This is a frontal ability and it's always aimed at a random player. So if you're all stacked up together, you know exactly where the breath's gonna go and what you need to do to avoid it. And the last ability we'll talk about for this encounter is Downburst. This is a small circle that you'll see spawn on the ground and it starts expanding until it fills up the entire arena. Any player that gets hit by this will take a massive amount of nature damage and get silenced. You can avoid this circle by being knocked up in the air by twisting winds. So yeah, you just need to avoid the initial hit. Though sadly you can't do anything like jump over it or heroic leap, but you can use stuff like a mage blink, transcendence for a monk, and perhaps even something like a warlock gateway. Yeah, I'm really not sure about that last one. Does it work? Anyway, the first time we encounter this boss, it's an absolute disaster. We'll touch on my overall healing at the end of the video, and we'll go over a few things that I've picked up on, because just like the last episode, we're still doing things incorrectly. Oh, and just an FYI, all of this footage was recorded before episode 1 actually went live. So all of the feedback I've received from you guys, I've not actually had time to put it into play. If by episode 3 I haven't made any of those improvements, well, then we might have an issue. But yeah, we'll talk more about that at the end of the video. Alright, so a few attempts and a handful of deaths later, we finally get the boss down. But I don't think we're timing this one. And then we move on to the third and final boss. And there are 2 main abilities that I just want to go over. Firstly, we have Static Cling. Basically, as a player, you don't want to be on the ground when this cast goes off. So just as the cast is about to end, you want to jump. And doing this on the monk makes me very much miss my demon hunter. Because they've got double jump and glide, man, they have it easy. Now, if you fail to do this, you will take a lot of nature damage and you'll have your movement speed reduced by 90% for 18 seconds. Now, the static cling can be dispelled and you can also use stuff like Blessing of Freedom from Paladins. But if you are, however, unable to do so, you could be in for a rough ride. Because the next ability that the boss casts is Unstable Grounding Field. The boss starts channeling a triangle lightning field. This channels for 10 seconds, and if you're not inside the triangle when it's finished, well, you're probably gonna die, because anything outside of the lightning field takes massive damage. Along with this, there's an ad you need to kill called Skyfall Nova. This ad inflicts arcane damage to all players every second until it's destroyed. And then there's Chain Lightning that affects a random player that you just need to be spread for. So, of course, as expected, we do wipe on this boss. It goes a little better the second time, but unfortunately, we wipe again. And thankfully, third time lucky, we managed to get the boss down and finally finish this dungeon. And as expected, because we are like, what, 12 minutes over time, we get no rating. We get no loot either, but let's be honest, I don't think we deserve any from this place. Finally, we can put Vortex Pinnacle behind us, and we can go somewhere else. And the key we get from this one was an alderman. Oh, and I decided to go back to 6s. I thought that would be a good idea, because clearly I was still a big reason as to why these groups were failing so much. But at this point, I honestly didn't know why. This run went okay, not too much to talk about. But the third boss? You're meant to kite him through the orbs, right? Not like tank and spank and cause your healer to cry. That was an experience. So we ended up free chesting this run. It took our total rating up to 670. And we ended up getting a crit haste ring traded to us by the hunter. And no, it hasn't changed my opinion on hunters. Not yet anyway. It's going to take more than a ring. And the key we get from this one is a Vortex Pinnacle. Yay. Yep, we managed to stay away for one dungeon, and oh look, we're back here again. And honestly, the only reason I'm tolerating this place and wanting to finish it is for the stupid trinket. Trinket's so good. So I'm either going to have to get very lucky in the vault, or I'm going to have to farm this place. Man, that sucks. But thankfully this time, because it is a 6 and not a 9, we only have to deal with one affix. The group I put together weren't massively geared, but everyone knew what they were doing. We did in fact +3 this key with only one death. This took our total rating up to 708, and we looted a cloak from the chest, which was really no good for me. I couldn't even give this thing away. From here we move on to a freehold +6. Other than a pull by the first boss, this run went really well. We got to the first boss here and the warrior got knocked off of the platform. This meant that they aggroed everything down below, and although I am not actually healing correctly, I managed to keep everyone alive. So we managed to free chest this run. It takes our total rating up to 718, but sadly no loot. Man, can we just take a moment to appreciate the prop paladin damage? I seriously need to play one of those. And then we move on to a key that I have been absolutely dreading on this healer, Neltharian's Lair. Now, I quite enjoy tanking this place, I'll be honest, but the thought of healing? Yeah, totally different vibes. If the third and fourth boss are tanked incorrectly, chances are you're not going to finish this place. Though thankfully I do put together a pretty decent group. Item levels hovering around 410, and I decided to only take players that had previously been here before. And well, it paid off because we absolutely smashed this run. We free chested the key, it took our total rating up to 815, and we looted a neck piece from the chest, though sadly it had pretty bad stats for me, so I ended up trading it to the mage. So at the end of this reset, our item level is 405 and our Mythic Plus rating is 815. But before you guys click away, I just wanted to talk about my healing. So as mentioned earlier, all of this was recorded before the first episode went live. Some of you have been commenting and letting me know what I'm doing wrong and offering tips. So I thought I'd just mention that before any of you jump to conclusions and think I've not been listening and I haven't learned anything. I've been trying to take it all in. I very much appreciate it. Keep all of the tips coming. I've been watching a lot of guides and doing a lot of research. I've even been changing some of my keybinds. So just know I am very determined to get competent at the Mistweaver Monk. And by all means, if you guys see some glaring issues for episode 3, you make sure you point them out, because if I don't know I'm making mistakes, then I'm not gonna learn. Just do it in a nice way, okay? Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, but that's me done. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.